What's popular YouTube? Another day, another demo. And today we are in, you can't really tell, but it's Barcelona. It is a place on earth where the food is fantastic. The weather is a little bit warmer than Copenhagen, and it's a place I can go in Europe that isn't going back to Canada in between the Blast Fall Finals, which was an amazing event, Blast World Finals, which is coming up. Unfortunately, that won't have a crowd. If you got a chance to watch the Blast Fall Final, of course, you got to see how incredible it was to be back at LAN. And that was my major, right? I wasn't at the major. I was at the Blast Fall Final, and I even got to cast the Grand Finals, the honor of casting the Grand Finals. Scrawny absolutely killed it. I was happy to be his partner in crime for that event, and we got so lucky with the fantastic games that we got to witness. And now, in the interim, I'm here in Barcelona. Few days off, 13 days vacay, and I'll go back to Copenhagen for the Blast World Final. And for now, I'm on my mobile setup. You know what it is. And today we're here to talk about a very special game, okay? This was one from the Grand Finals. And before we got into the Grand Finals, I was thinking, man, this is going to be a bad final, okay? Every single time a caster is about to cast a game, we always think about it. Is this going to be a good game? Did we get the lucky game of the day, you know, based on who won yesterday or whatever? Is it going to be buns? I thought that this was going to be cheeks, all right? I thought that this was going to be one of the worst finals ever because Vitality, they're in last dance mode, but not in the charming way, right? In the horrible, this team is going to blow up soon, and a couple people need to get caught, and it's not like this team should be together type beat, right? But they made it all the way to the finals. They knocked out Astralis in the semis, and they're here to play Navi, and they're thinking, okay, Navi, number one team in the world. They have Nuke in their back pocket as their 20-0 streak on Nuke, 20 or 21-0. I think they were looking for 21 with this map, and they're going up against Vitality, who are literally about to make roster moves, and the whole world knows they're going to blow up, all right? But who's going to stop them? That's right, it's Apex. This game, we're going to both see how Vitality were able to beat Navi on Nuke, and also how Apex, in particular, made a huge dent that without him and his presence on this map in this half and the second half and his calling, there was no chance that they'd be able to beat Navi on Nuke. And now, what's amazing about watching Apex, it's always a treat, let me tell you, to watch IGL demos, and we don't do it nearly enough. But Automatic famously has said that he loves watching IGL demos because they typically don't have as much individual skill. That's not always the case. Prime Fallen was one of the best players in the world. Navi is an amazing player. I mean, there's definitely examples of IGLs that can hold their own. Nexa, you know what I mean? But for some players are players who clearly aren't on par. You know, Apex is sitting there besides Zaiwu, Masuda, and he's not here technically for his individual level. He's for a combination of things. One of those things can be entry fragging, but most importantly, IGLing, and Apex is the last guy that I thought would become an IGL. But in this last year, he's really made a brand for himself as the in-game leader of Vitality and has done a lot for the team. And I think between him and Xtaz, they created one of the best systems that we've seen. But, you know, even with that, of course, the team is not exactly where they need to be, and they have mediocre results here and there. But this map is a fantastic example of what it looks like when it's good, okay? And we're going to pay attention to the way that Apex controls outside and keeps vision and constantly interrupts these smokes outside with his Molotovs. Here's a point where Apex is going to be throwing supporting flashes for Zaiwu. And whenever you're in a situation like this, let's take a look, okay? You can flash over top of big. Apex has an opportunity where they're up 5v4. And this is, in chess, a very common thing to do. When you're up material, you take your chances to trade down. And here's a moment where Apex not only trades down, but he maintains vision outside by sweeping over to Big Garage. And this is a really important spot for him when we think about this. Now, we're going to watch Apex get caught off guard in this position. And the bane to his existence was electronic. But at the same time, what's really important here is we see that Apex maintains his presence as much as possible. And when he plays outside, he is specifically looking for electronic, right? We're going to see a number of times where it looks like he's searching for a ghost. He'll be holding a smoke where you're like, what the hell? There's no one there. And here's an example of that, and it's because electronic will very oftentimes lurk around mini, either wrap inside or walk through a smoke into Big Garage. And you can see Apex running, and he recognizes there's a hold that needs to happen upstairs, but he doesn't want to help with that just yet. And the worst thing that could happen is Electronic swoops in behind him, kills him with a Tech 9, and then helps them clamp down on the upstairs site. So we'll see moments in time where Electronic's going to be aware of his presence, even if it's not there, just because of the patterns of play that he has. So here, again, they're constantly trying to interrupt these smokes that come down. Now, that one specifically for the mini smoke on a different variation of smokes that happens outside. And there are so many things that can happen on Nuke. It makes it very hard to know exactly why things always happen for sure on CT side. There's a number of mind games. Sometimes the variations of smokes are used for specific reasons. Sometimes they're used as fakes. Sometimes they work depending on where a CT is standing. Sometimes it won't work if a CT is in a different place. And it doesn't always mean it's a bad play if it doesn't work, right? That's something that we have to keep in mind, that at this level, since these teams know each other so much, these smoke variations and how we control outside come down to different gambles sometimes. Mind games, conditioning, match history. And we see that one thing we're going to focus on is what we can see, and that's Apex. He's always very persistent about how much control of outside he wants to give up, right? Where he wants to refresh a spot. We'll see him move into Big Garage after his teammate just dies, or come back to it late. Here in this situation, we get a rotation from outside after we deny any information to come back upstairs, take that peek into Hut, and let's watch that one more time. So we see again, we're going to pay attention to the responses to the outside presence. Here we carefully dodge a flash. We spam on time, and there's two players crossing right now. Apex can only hear a certain amount in this position, but he's here to make sure Electronic doesn't make his way into Big Garage. You can see how confident he is about what can be taken and who's going to be where based on what he doesn't clear. That's a very important thing. You know, Electronic could be tucked in here on the right side of Big Garage, but because he knows Electronic so well, this is the angle that he's holding for him. We see a position where they just start to rotate back, and Navi expect him to be a little bit scared, right? And now what does Apex do? He sees that Boomich is intent on coming back towards the upper site, gets up into heaven, takes a duel here, a little bit of one, but there's squeaky presence, right? And so with his teammate dying here opposite vent and squeaky open, Apex gets those shots off, but he doesn't stay in heaven and continue fighting versus squeaky. Instead, he drops in after doing damage versus Hut and can deny Hut. This is a very important thing that Apex did. First of all, it shows he's committed to his rotation. And number two, he's aware of what fight he needs to take, okay? So he's going to take this duel versus the Hut. He's got teammates rotating up, which can help him out. And now that those guys have come up, Bit has to look at Apex, who would have been in heaven, and Masuda can kill Bit, who now has to look at heaven, right? So he's displaced his aim just by committing to that rotation and allowing somebody to come up and help him. And that was a very smart move that Apex just did right there. We're going to have another smoke interrupted. And you can see how Apex interacts with these smokes, okay? The thing is that they see that the smoke has been interrupted, so some spam comes down versus it. The really great part about this move, as we can see, is that Apex, we see a low HP play, right? We get behind cover. We still are a soldier for the team in the sense that we're putting ourselves at risk. We're getting the job done here. We're looking to deny outside control so that the rotations for our teammates are easier. That's what his job is, to put himself out there to make life easier for everybody else, right? To free up rotations. So in this position, we have Apex coming in and smoking ramp while his teammate rotates down. He's here to refresh that position. And again, now Masuda with Apex behind him on the ramp can focus forward on anything towards secret or towards event drop. And Apex can tell him with certainty that he has nothing to worry about. In this position, the rotates come down. Masuda and him join in for frags. And it's because he has already sent Masuda down in time that they're able to make a read on the situation. So again, we're copying and pasting these incendiaries outside to deny the smoke in this position, and it actually turns into kind of a one-way on certain angles for Apex. And now we saw last round, he tried to use that smoke and immediately got spammed within it. So he comes around the back of Big Garage. It's still a problem for you on the T side, and see who appears finally like an apparition. Electronic out of the mini smoke like clockwork, even though Apex has been looking for him a number of times. Electronic is that dude who's not going to be as scared as well to try to disrupt your movements over and over again. And on the T side, he's looking for those risks every day of the week. So Apex, you know, he goes, oh, and he's really mad. But at the same time, he knows it's electronic. He's going to do it sometimes, all right? So at the same time, he's got kind of a smirk, a French baguette smirk, whatever you would call it, because, okay, electronic killed me one time, but you only have one round in this game. Game plan is working perfectly so far. So this round, we're going to change it up a bit. We spent a lot of time outside, and in this way, we're putting indirect pressure on outside, all right? So this is an interesting setup because we actually have ramp completely open for the CT side, and Masuda is making the early rotation down, who is normally playing there in ramp. He used to be playing upper with Kyojin, but they swapped him out to have shox in front of Squeaky, and shox had a really strong game here in this situation. So now the information will be gathered that ramp has been taken because of some grenades. So Apex will come down here and wait. And this is where there is a bit of pressure on the CT setup from this perspective. Now Zaiwu is rotating around Heaven area, and he just is aware of the idea that they can take ramp. And what's funny about this is we have Navi come towards ramp. Apex doesn't see them go lower. Zaiwu doesn't see them go Hell. And they actually walk back into the lobby because they see an empty ramp and they get worried, and they run right into the upstairs right into the upstairs hold where shox and Kyojin are throwing their smokes down and mollies to try to defend. Shox does a splendid job from opposite vent, and now there's only one player left, and Apex will take him out. So there's another very cool different setup. And again, it's kind of indirect pressure to not even play anybody in a spot. You see ramp is totally open. You're not going to think, oh, this team's so stupid they didn't play ramp. You're going to think, what are they thinking about that they don't leave somebody inside of the ramp? And one thing that's important to remember is with places like ramp and places like outside and places like mid on Mirage or mid on something, these are spots where you can't plant the bomb, right? They're important control for the CT side because they defend a choke point that leads to both A and B, but you can't actually plant there. So you can use that to your advantage in that example, as we saw from Vitality, and not play there, just like you wouldn't play in middle every single round on Mirage, even though sometimes they would go there. And we'll see in a round coming up that Vitality will use this conditioning against Navi. So what's interesting so far about this game is we've seen Navi, you know, they take outside control, and 70 to 80% of rounds on the T side are going to have something to do with outside control. But for the most part, it's been scorched earth for Vitality. They left it open. They fight around it, but they don't go there for the battle. They've shoved it out of their game plan, right? Every single time. You see Apex swinging around, playing the spot where Elige likes to play, watching the back of Mini, trying to find electronic, but keeping everybody at arm's reach, right? And so far, so great. But in order to take down a team like Navi on Nuke, of course, your game plan has to evolve. It's got to have way more layers, and part of the reason that Navi are so good on this map is because they themselves have very, very tricky defaults. A strong outside lurk and electronic, and, well, best player in the world, right? Best player on the world on the map. Now it's 8-1. T timeout would be called after they get caught off guard. A lot of this round didn't have to do with Apex, but whenever someone has information on outside, that counts for something. And now look, the change of tempo, okay? Apex will appear outside. And what do we also see here? One of the very first times that Navi put huge amounts of pressure outside with multiple players, Apex takes them all down. So this was both an exquisite showcase of a strong game plan, but also some good mechanics. See Apex sparring with his teammate a little bit, just for fun. And now this is where, you know, I'm casting this game. I'm like, this is on another level now. Now we've seen Navi get pushed to the brink a number of times on Nuke, over and over again. They almost lose Nuke. They almost lost to G2. Nico was on him. Perfection. But nobody ever closes out the map. They always come close. So I see a lead like this. Vitality see a lead like this. They're not freaking out, you know? They're not freaking out. All right. So Apex throws this aggressive lurk smoke outside, which is to posture as if he's taking outside control. And since he's not playing with it, what the intention is to slow down their default a little bit, right? They just saw you own them last round. So now you're going to respect the smoke. You're going to use a couple extra grenades. You're going to really take your time clearing everything out. Or at least that's the hope, right? So here's the situation. We join up with Masuda again. I'm loving the early rotations here from Apex. I think one thing we saw with Zywoo I thought was very disappointing. The first time that they played against Navi on Nuke in this tournament, just a couple days prior, Zywoo's rotations were so slow. He was nowhere to be found, really. He got some kills, but the impact wasn't there, in my opinion. I think we saw an amazing game from Glaive from the CT perspective. We're seeing an amazing game now from Apex, and the very coolest part about Apex has been he's been doing this all with a rifle. And, you know, have we seen too many nice shots? I mean, we've seen shots so far that most people can hit, right? But what we've seen is just a brain muscle that is absolutely throbbing. Some very deliberate rotations. We're now at the point of the match where everything has started to become very clear. Now Navi are just playing the game he wants them to play, right? And we will collect a couple more rounds for Navi, but that's just about it. So what do we do now, 2v4? I mean, we probably got to walk away in this position. Deep molly outside. Now the threat, of course, Electronic could be barreling over top of Big Garage and coming on top of Mini and then... not Big Garage, sorry. Coming over top of Mini and dropping into Mini and killing Apex. Now, Apex tries to molly outside for the cross, so they have to smoke it if they're going to cross, because they're not going to run through that incendiary. And here he comes right to fortify upstairs because they're calling specifically to defend against an upstairs hit. Because one thing we didn't see from Navi so far, I think we saw one fast upstairs hit, if any, so far in this half. And Navi have a very, very powerful upstairs hit. That's partly because they have the right grenades and a really, really good, clean execution, but also because they have just some very powerful players behind it. Their flash timings are very tight, so someone's almost always blind, and Kyojin is a very weak player upstairs who's getting better and was getting some kills in this game on the holds. But this was a crazy round because I think it was 5v5 when the bomb got planted. Bit swings out wide here from Dark and plays this honestly incredibly well. And actually, let's sit back and enjoy this wonderful clutch from Boomich as they are just way too terrified about how they should play this Boomich with his Galil and Sidearm. Take out 3 players, and he puts a 3rd round on the board for Navi. But around that, you know, Vitality are just far ahead in up until that very moment, right? 3v1. And they pulled off the 5v5 retake. That was a moment where I was like, ugh, that's not a good look for Vitality. They didn't have the info. Downstairs got taken over. And then they are late, right? They're late. You don't want to go to 5v5 retake if possible. 5v4 is like the ideal situation. So here Apex and Shox come to try to deny information together. Very key detail, right, that they're doing it at the same time. And, oh yeah, this is actually around that Navi win. Or sorry, that Navi lose after... Yes, you heard it. Zywoo Zeused Simple in a grand final on land on their best map. Now we pay attention to what Apex is paying attention to. So we're looking at vent right here. We can see that the upstairs site is open to event timing, meaning if they drop the smoke in front of the vent, someone could sneak down. And there are going to be rounds where, you know, Bit and a couple other players might just take a spawn and actually sneak down the vent really quickly. And in situations where you break the glass, like here, for example, you have to be very aware of if someone can break the vent. If you don't break the glass and the door is still intact, you can feel a little bit safer even if someone does get down the vent, that you don't have to worry too much depending on what your setup is. But you'll always see if a team breaks the glass specifically that they're going to keep an eye on the vent, right? The setup is going to be based on this because Io gets a collateral AK headshot. And once again, look at a brand new brave setup here from Vitality, not playing it standard and expecting good results. And Simple kind of mad coming downstairs, taking out everybody. Bit going with the kill, and this is where it's 11-4 for Navi, and you're like, all right, honestly, 11-4, and I was thinking they're going to pull this back. 11-4, I wasn't even worried for Navi, I won't lie. And then this is where I really started, you know, I can't remember everything that happens in this half, but this is where I was like, all right, Apex Apex, he's got a good head on his shoulders, okay? And did Navi win the pistol round? I was like, it's over. 5-11 on CT side with the best, not just the best, Simple is the best player by stats on every single map in the pool, except for, guess which one? Vertigo, the only map that they don't play in the whole world in 2021. He has the best stats on every single map. And the biggest discrepancy is on CT side Nuke, where he's the best player by a huge margin. And just on Nuke in general, insane at the map. So when you look at CT side Nuke and it's Navi, he is that X factor that can win despite how badly everything else is going. And because of the small CT side advantages that we get these days, the droppable grenades and the improved silence M4, on top of the Navi having Simple and a very good CT side in general, you think, okay, this is barely a lead, honestly. I mean, there's no way to put it. You have to win 5 rounds on T side. It doesn't feel as close when you put it like that, right? You're probably going to have to win 5 rounds, probably going to have to be multiple rifle rounds in here. And if Navi can stop you at any one of those points, they've been in a position like this with a bigger discrepancy and still come back and won the game. So Vitality, they're playing with a little bit less pressure as the team who, you know, it all might be over for at some point. But the emotions were there. Apex was here to game, and he really left it on the table in that regard, and he called an exquisite game. And here we are in the second half. An opening kill for Navi. We're going to pay attention to all of Apex's moves and how they find a way to counter what Navi were doing to them. See in this position that Apex is looking for Electronic inside of Mini, where he is most times. And there's always the thought that someone could be very far back in CT. Apex will find Electronic, who is normally the Mini player, and then he goes and kills Bit inside of the ramp. And this is kind of an unorthodox position for all of Navi to be in. But now that they've got these 2 kills, I'm sure they have some information on what can happen. The bomb is still outside of the lobby in this position, and it's very likely that when your Heaven guy dies, that lobby gets taken over. So Perfecto is here in the hut, and that's when Masuda comes down. Masuda hits a fantastic shot on Boomich, I have to say. That was like a 40-degree flick after Boomich spotted him. So that was a very tragic moment for Navi, but they hit tons of those shots, so you can't really feel that bad for them. Masuda clutches the round, and there's some magic there, right? A great performance from Apex, a good read on the situation as a team. Could have still lost because Masuda was alone carrying the bomb through lobby, even though lobby had a high probability of being taken over. But they trusted in their pieces, and they had a material advantage, and then they closed the game out. Well, not the whole game, but just that round. Now let's take a look at this. If I can remember correctly, this is another great look for Apex where he finds the correct timing to pounce. And on top of the Mini, you're now a threat to any Mini player, of course, right? And that's Electronic most notably. But there are so many threats outside. You could be anywhere. Electronic will actually go down early. And here's a moment where Apex will come through and kill Boomich. And he takes out Perfecto as well, mirroring last round where he turned 1 kill into 2. He was completely unstoppable, dropped down the vent with absolutely no fear, and has just been assisting, shooting everybody in the side that his teammate had alerted them to, right? Over and over again. I mean, what can you say? He's got his paws on every single round. It's actually unreal that these two rounds just completely break Navi in some sense, right? 11-6 is one thing. 13-6, that's another. With the idea that you get to go up against a team who's just on pistols, this game could have changed completely, right? I mean, I'm sure for everybody who's been following CS closely and seeing this Navi Duke streak, you weren't exactly worried for them going up against Vitality when they had CT side and 5 rounds and a pistol round, right? But it's these 2 plays from Apex in the second half that just broke them, right? Turn their money upside down. But we see a lot of bravery in the way that Apex is playing. And here's a spot where he's got the vent molly. It takes a long time to expand. Boomich eventually dies. And again, another kill upstairs. The first one's Kyojin's, but it's Apex who got the info and put the molly down, right? He's the reason upstairs gets taken. I mean, this is all Apex. In that first half, shox actually had a better half than Apex if we use kills as the primary metric. And if you watch shox in that first half, you could see why he was amazing from Squeaky. He did a lot, and a lot of rounds he got 2Ks on rifles and everything like that. But in terms of positions that being played, I mean, Mini's up there, of course. It's a very, very hard position to play. Scary position to play. Playing outside with a rifle, I feel like that's a whole nother level of scary, honestly. But then again, I don't want to put one position over another because Mini and outside, they rely on each other to stay alive. And either of them doing well makes the other one's life easier, of course, right? Don't want to be too binary, but I always look at that stuff. And now it's simply the call is don't lose, right? You're in a position where you know that the money is horrible for Navi. They've forced down. You can already hear the MP9. And you have outside at your disposal if you like to. And Vitality do not rush the situation at all, right? They play with a lot of tenure here. They go inside, they wait for pushes. They come back outside with their delayed smoke to press their advantage. And by going inside first, they bring some of the utility out for Navi. They draw some of the utility out, the very limited utility the other team has, in a position where you put so much pressure on them. You put 1-2 rifle ons in a row. You had them on eco just now. They've been forcing the whole time. And then you go back to outside where you can maintain distance with a rifle, slowly crush on control and take it into kind of a regular round, if you will. And, we've got a very fantastic ending, actually. And this is where Navi still showed that they were very much alive. This is where, I mean, this round is over, right? No, just kidding. ZywOo in a 1v4 situation. Bit goes down. Door's wide open in front of him on control, but they're going to give him some space here. And is ZywOo a guy that you want to give a canvas to? It looks like not. Pins Electronic to the wall. 1v4 to end one of the most storied nuke streaks in the history of the game versus Navi, who are apparently in their era. 20-1 now because of Apex's fantastic calls, ZywOo's 1v4 clutch at the end. In any of those rounds, man, there is a world where Navi can come back if Vitality let off the pressure just a little bit. But we never see it happen. It was an extraordinary game from Vitality. It wasn't luck involved. And you could see on either map outside of Nuke that Navi were themselves and playing incredibly well. So full credit here to Vitality. Incredible game plan. Amazing moves from Apex. And a great display for a team that, you know, who knows how long they'll be playing together still. So hope you enjoyed that. Glad to cover that one. And there's a lot of games I want to cover from the Blastfall Final. If you've got a player you want me to watch, let me know. And as always, be safe.